So, what is the title of the talk today? Is there a thinker to thoughts? Very interesting. Is there a thinker to thoughts? Yes. Okay, so as always, we're going to start with a non-duality introduction. What is non-duality? And then I'll go into the details of the title after I've given an introduction. So, what is non-duality? I'm sorry, I'm not always the quickest to start speaking. I try to let it be really authentic rather than something I'm remembering. I don't know if you've ever created art or like danced or something. So you might know all the dance moves and you might know how to paint, but then after a while what you begin to do is like really let the music dance the body. So the body's learnt the movement, so it's there in the body, but then you really let the music dance the body. Or the same with the artist. Like it's letting the inspiration paint rather than your knowledge and your learning, even though that has an effect. It's letting the moment really speak for itself. So it's really fascinating when you begin to learn another language, because one thing that can happen is you can really perceive how your whole world is made up of language. The table, the chair, the people that you know, everything is named in a thought and put into sentences and stories which we communicate with. And I believe, and this is what I've learned also through non-duality and my own experience, is that at some point we identify more with thought, with a story of what's happening and a story of ourself, more so than what's actually happening. So rather than seeing life as it truly is, which is wordless, which is non-dual, not two, it's not one either, because one's another thought, but it's just not two because that's what we've imposed on it. Like, our language is dualistic. And at some point in childhood, we have identified more and more with thinking. So our experience of this moment is thought-based rather than actually experiential. There's moments where we fall out of it being thought-based, and sometimes we call that happiness, but we normally associate it with external things like having a party or getting the best birthday present that you've ever wanted, or getting a new lap tray. At some age there is this identification. I suspect it's quite young, but I don't think it gets like really strong until you're in your teenage years. So it's like it begins, I would say, maybe like 2 or 3 years old when the brain starts functioning on a higher level. But then it's like that time between that age and puberty, it kind of is getting stronger and stronger. But I feel like the child can still kind of really fall out of thinking. And it is amazing what thought does to the experience. So, like now, I'm sure everybody that's sitting listening to this talk, or most people, perceive or think they perceive what their problem is. And this seems really real for them, and this is what's happening often, is that humans are contemplating what their problem is and why they aren't happy. And they believe that to be true. But it's really not true. Your problem always is the identification with thought over beingness. So what I was saying is that the thought illusion is so strong. It creates so many problems, this identification with what you think, and it's so detailed. The most detailed thought there is that I exist inside this body. I am an entity that exists inside this body. I'm born at birth into this body, and I die when this body dies. And this is the biggest thought illusion there is. And this creates a lot of suffering in people. But then there's like all these other thoughts that create such strong experiences. So say if you were told that you were bad a lot as a child, you might develop an idea that you're not conscious of, that you're bad. So you might experience a lot of shame interacting in the world. So, for example, if you're out with friends and you spill a little bit of beer or something, which is nothing, there's nothing embarrassing really about that. But this could create a lot of like, I am bad feeling. And that, dependent on your conditioning, you might not be conscious, so you spill the beer, you might not be conscious that you feel shame, but what it results in is you shouting at someone, like, oh, that person pushed me, how dare you push me? Like, you can even imagine that ending up in a bar fight, all because there is this identification with a shameful feeling that I am bad. And that is so powerful. It creates such immense feelings. And there's a belief in the body like that there is somebody here that is bad. And it can create a whole host of feelings. It can create, like this narrative, I am bad, can create exhaustion, depression, rage, anger, superiority, jealousy, envy, all types of things. But that's just one set of thoughts. So there could be, I'm not good enough, as one of these thoughts that have become embodied and become you. And through I'm not good enough, there can be a whole host of actions and behaviors. It can create you to never have enough energy to finish anything. So you actually manifest that in your life, like I'm not good enough. So therefore you don't have the energy to succeed at stuff, because I am good enough is inherently debilitating. It has lack of energy in it. If you have that story running, and that story can be running all day, your chakra can be burning with I'm not good enough. So it can be this feeling, this unconscious feeling, I'm not good enough. And it can create lack of energy, lack of motivation. So then you have it reflected back to you everywhere. People telling you you're not good enough, not because you're not actually good enough, but because you don't have the energy to enact it. So what we get when we get into this subject, we then think, okay, I've got to change all my psychology. But that's impossible. You can't ever do that. You can't ever change all of your psychology and uncondition yourself. So I used to think I would become unconditioned and a perfect person, which was a delusion of the ego mind identity anyway, because that's all about itself. Like, I'm going to become a perfect person. Like, enlightenment is for me. Like, I'll uncondition myself. But you wouldn't move if you were completely unconditioned. What can change, and what non-duality offers, is the going to the core, which is I am that person. And as you go to the core, you will recondition yourself, more than likely in the positive, maybe sometimes in the negative. Like, I'm sure and many people have reconditioned themselves in the negative from non-duality, but mostly in the positive, like from understanding your conditioning and understanding the way you see the world, will recondition things in a more positive way. You know, seeing your unconscious, seeing your shadow is a positive thing, because it can help you not act out the surface stuff or the more surface level ideas, like just getting angry at someone because a tiny bit of beer is spilt on their carpet, or because they're 10 minutes late or something. So I'm not saying don't recondition yourself. As I say all the time, I think for your neighbors, for your family, for your loved ones, for your work colleagues, recondition yourself and get to know the shadow. But that is on a different level from what non-duality is pointing out. But I don't think it's lower or worse. I think psychologists and psychology in the West have done amazing things. And there's great things that you can learn from them on the human level. But that's not inherently what non-duality is. Non-duality is the end of two-ness. And the fundamental separation is that this bundle of conditioning is me. I am a subject in relationship with an objective world. And that is not true. That is the first lie. When you're a baby, you know your parents keep going and saying your name. Hello, there's Lisa. Isn't she a cute little girl? Look at those brown eyes and that button nose. Isn't she cute? Isn't she cute? Oh, she's a bad girl. She's a bad girl. Oh, what a smelly nappy. And it keeps pointing that there is a Lisa in here. There is a Roger or Darren or Cassie or I'm trying to be PC here by not saying a Christian name, but I'm struggling to think of a non-Christian English name. Well, actually Roger in Tamil actually is a name, and it's a female name, Rose. Roger is Rose in Tamil. Yeah, so I meant it in Tamil. There's my PC-ness. I am PC. Finding myself funny there. Yeah, so this is the fundamental flaw, is that I am somebody in relationship. So who are you? So now I'm going to point to who you are in the positive, but know that anything that I say in the positive cannot actually be it, because that's words. But that's what I'm going to do. Some teachers just stick to the negative, like not this, not that, not this, not that, but I'm going to go for the positive. And then people feel like they have something to get as a person, but that's somebody as a separate person. But that's okay. That will disappear when it disappears. So you are not the person. So what it deeply feels like when there's identification with thoughts is that there is this voice in your head that's constantly like meh, 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 telling a story like, do this, don't do that, this is what your problem is, this is not what your problem is, it's because of her, it's because of him, it's because of them, it's because of the dog, it's because of the smells, it's because of the sound, it's because of the lap tray, it's because of lack of money. I mean, that's a huge one. So all these things that it's because of. And that's what the mind is saying. And it's also, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. The more positive the mind is, the better the experience will be. But the nature of the mind is to normally look for problems and trying to fix it. So once it's identified with being someone, it's always trying to fix itself and trying to find out what the problem is. And it thinks that the goal is a happiness feeling or an excitement feeling, that I've got to always be in those feelings, and then I will be a happy, complete person, a pleasurable feeling. Yeah, what was I saying before I spilt my drink all over my chops? Yeah. So it's always thinking about like what it wants to be. So there's this voice in the head that's like yak, 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 on it goes. And that feels like you. So this ethereal thought-based person feels like you, and it feels like it's like separate inside the body, and nobody else can hear me. It's really funky, eh? And then I'm controlling this body and I'm making choices. Another thing it does is that a lot of the time is often regret, like feeling a lot of regret about situations. So it's like telling all these stories, what I should have done, what I shouldn't have done, so all these different things. And that there is a belief that that is who you are. Like that narrator is who I am. And I'm in control of that narrator, or I as that narrator are in control. So I can say, lift the hand, and the hand gets lifted. And that narrator is always telling things. It's not always conscious of everything that's going on. As it gets into psychology, it becomes not conscious of what's going on. But it's always telling a story of what's going on and what the problem is and what you should be and who you are. and it feels like you. But when you begin to become more still and question the nature of your reality more, you'll notice that two things is that there is something that is watching that narrator. So that narrator is not watching, it's being watched. And that's a fundamental realization. So there is something that is watching that narrator. And why is that fundamental? That is fundamental because who is that watcher? If you're convinced that you are the person that's narrating, so most people think, oh, I'm the person that's narrating, and that person is conscious. But what you might notice is that that narrator is coming and going, and it's changing, and it's ethereal, it's not solid, and it's being watched by something that is solid and steady. I mean, it's not solid, but it's like always there. Solid as in like it cannot ever move. So you can never have an experience without consciousness. But yet, you can have an experience without that narrator. That narrator comes and goes. It's interesting, eh? But consciousness is always required. You can't ever have a non-conscious moment. The difficulty of the word conscious is that when I say that, you might think unconscious, like I'm unconscious of certain dynamics. Or you might think of unconscious as when I'm in deep sleep. But we'll put deep sleep away for the moment, and we'll speak about that later. But in the waking moment, there can only be consciousness here. You can have unconsciousness of your dynamics, but you can't be unconscious here, otherwise nothing would be happening. There has to be consciousness in every moment. That cannot be questioned or doubted. There's always consciousness in every moment. Like right here, there is this watching. The person, so that narrator in the head, is coming and going and ethereal. It's sometimes there, it's changing its stories, you can't quite capture hold of it, it's not solid. Whereas the consciousness is always here watching, including watching that person. It's watching everything. And it's happening without any effort. You as the narrator are not saying, okay, I'm going to turn on my consciousness. Boop, boop, let's put on the switch of consciousness. Boop, boop. Because who would be conscious of that? You can't ever be conscious of that. So consciousness is always inherent in every moment and doesn't belong to the me, to that narrator in the head. To that person that you believe yourself to be. It's there prior to that person. This is fundamental realization. It is there prior to you, and it is the solid ground of your experiencing. Its lover, its other side, is this sense of I am. That is always here too. Not I am this mind, I am thoughts, not a thought. Some people call the I am a thought, but it's a sense of being. It's love. It's the sense of being in the middle of the chest. Because because of my neurodiversity, I can never get it right what Ramana Maharshi says. Some people, I thought it was the left side of the heart and the right side, but in the end, I'm not very good with my left and right. I can only tell it by, it's in the center here, in the chest here. Here, left or right, it doesn't matter. Here, the heart chakra, we can call it that. You can feel it when you put your attention there most of the time. So it can be covered up by things. So that's a lover. That's like they're one and the same thing in the end. They have to go together. Sometimes you can have the love awakening first, and sometimes the emptiness. So the I am is love, and the empty looking is like the wisdom, is like this vast emptiness. And these two qualities are always here. They never leave. You might think they leave because you might think, I can't register them. So if I'm not registering them, they're not there. So I'm not registering them in a thought. Because it's not true, they're always here. They need to be here in order for existence to happen. Like you've always felt like you existed, like the I am, and you've always had this empty looking throughout your entire experience. And the other thing that is so beautiful about them is that they're only ever here. So when you really come to know yourself, you'll realize that you've only ever been here in this moment as this consciousness and this I am, and inside of the consciousness and I am have moved all experiences. So in that has come and gone thoughts, in that has come and gone feelings, in that have come and gone the world, people. And what happens and why the person suffers so much is because there is an identification with an illusory, thought-based person. And that's not who you are. The body will always have a character. For me, it's gone out of fashion saying there is no me or something, because the body has a character and you're looking through this character to this world. But in the intimacy of what is, in a way, that all disappears. There's only this empty looking and this I am. That's the fundamental of your experience. There's this empty looking and this I am. But what's happening in most of the human race is there's too much involvement in their thought-based identity and the character. There's the identification with that and their conditioning. That's not who you are. And through that over-identification, there's a loss of your innocence, a loss of that empty looking and that beingness. So you could say, like the person with identification, there's being lost in time, there's being lost in past and future, because the character, the illusory you, is made up in time. So some spiritual traditions would say, like, loss of this moment, you've got to be present. And it's not really you've got to be present, because the you is something that's always coming and going. It's a remembering of this presence, this essence that's always here. So it's kind of like you calm down the dense clouds of the illusion. So you allow the clouds to pass of you, and then you see that there's always been the sunlight behind the clouds. So there's always been this emptiness, this empty looking, and this I am. Like right now, in this moment, who is looking out? What is looking out? Oh, I'm getting hot with my hot water bottle. We just place her down there. Good girl. So what to do? So there's a few things I recommend. Like sort out your psychology, like get to know your shadow, your unconscious. Connect the thinking mind to the chakras and to the body. And this will calm down the character. So it will stop the character being so crazy. Because when the character is really suffering, it's impossible to hear about the silence of what is. And then the other thing that I would suggest is putting the attention in the I am, or in the empty looking. I mean, they're the same thing, but so putting your attention back in what's actually happening, which is this emptiness and this beingness experiencing itself as everything. So this empty looking is all things now. Like there isn't something in here looking at an outside world. The looking and the looked at are the same. The feeling and the felt are the same. So the object and the feeling of the objects are the same. The hearing and the heard are the same. Like your true essence is nowhere and all places. It's this vast emptiness and space, and this love that's below or behind or seemingly submerged by the identification with this thought-based character that becomes an energy, a contraction, like I am this person. And when you feel more happy generally, you're less identified with that person. But the mind says it's because of this or because of that. And when you're more unhappy, it's because there's more identification with the person. It's such a different way of being, and it really is freedom. There is no freedom found in the person. In the person, everything comes and goes. You can make the person's life so much better through reconditioning yourselves. There's so many amazing therapies out there. I have recommendations on my website. But please note, like, I'm not suggesting to anyone to just stick to what's on my website. Like, I just update it with cool things I find to share with you and other teachers. But it doesn't mean that I'm excluding all other teachers and therapies out there. It's just, you know, I don't know all these different therapies. Yeah. Okay. Where are the questions? Oh, right. Yes. So I forgot to answer the original title. Is there a thinker of thoughts? Thank you so much, astrology, for reminding me of the title of the talk. So in the end, is there a thinker of thoughts? There is no person thinking thoughts. Thoughts are arising, creating the illusion of the person. So thoughts are arising, giving the appearance of a character and a person, but there is no solid thinker. But they're coming out of this consciousness, of this empty space and this I am, and we don't know what that is. What we are, we can't look at. So in the experience, it's like an emptiness. It's appearing out of this emptiness, or you could say this mysterious force, or this intelligence. It's called all different types of things, but it's like totally mysterious as to where those thoughts are coming from. But absolutely no, there's no thinker of thoughts. There's no solid identity inside of you, me, anybody. It's like Siri. Like Siri is a program running, and there isn't a thinker of her thoughts. She's programmed to respond in certain ways, even though she looks like she has autonomy, because she can answer a question differently to different people, and she's evolving with questions and with getting to know you. But there is no identity in there. There is no thinker of her thoughts. There is a program that's running just like this. And it's coming from an undefined, silent, unknowable energy. Yes. Danke for reminding me of that.